Warning, incoming game over. Warning, incoming game over.
Hello everyone, welcome back to Game Over Ottawa. Maude and Damian here once again, and Damian, I feel like we are definitely cursed when we do the show together because at this point I don't think we've even done a win together. As the Senators lose 4-0 to the Buffalo Sabres, they've been shut out twice in their last 3 games. How are you feeling after this one?
Not good whatsoever. I think we're 0 and 4, 0 and 5, something
Yeah,
like
it's
that.
brutal.
Yeah, that, oh my goodness. That is your classic coming home from a long road trip game. 9 games on the road over, I think, 3 weeks or what it was. They probably went home somewhat for Christmas and stuff, I would have expected, but that was bad. That was bad. Top to bottom, they got a lot of shots on net, but you could tell that it was out of frustration and not out of, like thinking enough or playing their game.
Yeah, it's funny because this is the type of game where advanced stats just don't matter whatsoever.
No.
You look at them and they totally favor the Sens for the whole game. The Corsi is all in their favor, and not a single player had negative Corsi throughout the whole game. But it was just,
Wow.
despite that, the Sens were not the better team, basically just shooting themselves in the foot all night. And yeah, you mentioned about the shots. I looked at the heat map on Natural Stat Trick, and despite having over 30 shots, there was almost no, like, on the heat map it's supposed to be like dark red if it's a really good
Hmm.
chance. There's like nothing. It's like not
No.
even not even close to red, barely even yellow. It's just a whole bunch of green, which means that none of those shots were threatening. So absolutely everything gone wrong here for the Sens tonight. I don't even know where to start it. Do you want to start with just how it went wrong in the first period with those
Yeah.
early goals?
Well, okay. So should we start off also with the Forsberg discussion, or should we do that later? Because,
Well, let's get into it right now, I think, because
okay,
overall tonight, like I think he earned the start with his play against
sure.
Detroit,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
but then this is just what Anton Forsberg is at this point: is he'll have one really good game and then one game where he doesn't do you any favors at all. And yeah, it was a bunch of breakaways against him in this game, so it's kind of hard for me to blame the goalie with that. But at a certain point, you need a big save from your goaltender,
Hmm.
and he just usually can't get it done, right?
Yeah, because it's a tough one because he literally had like what were those goals against, right? Like you're supposed to make the first, here's one thing I'll say. You're supposed to make the first save as the goalie, right? If it's a rebound, you can't blame the goalie whatsoever. But then if you give up two breakaways, and Jack Quinn's a good goal scorer. He hasn't scored a lot this year, but he's a natural born goal scorer. When he is rolling, he's just going to find the back of the net no matter what. And they're basically two breakaways. And then the third goal, right? Who scored that? It was Cousins, right? The brutal giveaway by Jensen. Like,
Yeah.
I'll give him that. Like, Jensen, you've been great all year. I'm not gonna go off on him right now. Like, just chucks it up the middle like a huge pizza onto the blade of Cousins just snipes it past Forsberg. Uh, And then the last one, like, okay, sure, it deflects off the Shabbat. But then you gotta like wonder how many of those saves should you just be making as a goaltender, right?
Mm.
Like because that's the thing, you're paid to make those stops, not make the easy saves from the corner and those random shots from the point. You're paid to be the goaltender, and you're paid just under $3 million to make an above average save once in a while. And he didn't do that tonight. He maybe made one good stop, I think, but that's me being generous.
Yeah, that's the thing is like he had a couple of those saves against Detroit where he was able to make the save and you didn't really expect him to. Like he had that one where he went
Mhm.
across the crease, made the glove save. I think it was on a 2-on-1. But
Yeah.
he's not the type of goalie that can do that consistently. When it does happen, it's just a rarity. It's just a flash in the pan. And then it was right back to the typical Anton Forsberg tonight where you're just not getting a goalie who really gives you that much of a chance to
Mm-mm.
win games, specifically because he's not making those big saves. It's like if
No.
there's a high danger chance, it's probably going to go in, it feels like with him. So it's tough because I don't previously when the win streak happened, I didn't want to say that it was all Linus Olmark. Obviously, he was the huge probably biggest part of the winning streak, but I didn't want to say it was all on him because it seemed like the team really was starting to play much better. But now without him, it's just really ugly. And like I feel like I can't harp on goaltending too much tonight. I
Mhm.
feel like we probably got to swing it more towards the offense, just
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
over the last stretch here, I pulled some stats since December 1st, which includes the winning streak. It includes the
Yes.
December run of going, I think it was like 9-3-1. The Sens rank fifth last in goals for per game with 2.63, and that's including the games they were winning. During December, they scored exactly 3.0 goals for per game, which was about middle of the pack, and then uh, the goals against being 1.91. Obviously, they won those games because of the goaltending, and now you
Yeah.
don't have that goaltending, and you somehow have even less offense than you did in the month of December. It's just that's gonna result in nothing but losses.
Yeah. Well, like what is the longest we've gone with like lines that stick together? 3, 4, 5 games maybe?
Mm-hmm.
I saw a shift of Kachuk, Giroux, and Timmy. Like they switched up mid-game and they got a great chance right off the bat. Why are they not doing that? Why are we putting like Gregor with or sorry, I'm just out of options right now because I'm trying to think of all the lines we've seen, and we've seen every single combination pretty much. We've seen Cousins, Norris, Batherson. We've seen Batherson, Giroux, Stutza. Like they're all over the place. And I'm fine with keeping the D pairs like as is, right? Because I think when you have a two-man system back there, you really got to rely on each other and rely on effective communications. It seems like they've done that. For all the flack that the Sens have gotten over the years for being, bad defensively, this year, I think you could probably agree with me. They've been pretty good. Like there hasn't been I'm trying to think, there's not been a lot of games where they allowed five or more goals.
Mm-hmm.
Because the St. Louis game they allowed four. Edmonton, I think, was four. This game was four. So this is not a team that's going to give up a crazy amount of goals against. But the forwards, can we just please go back to the standard lines and not have this sort of galaxy brain thinking of putting Gaudette with Stutzla and Giroux, because Gaudette, man, he had a really bad game. He better start picking it up or he's going to find himself as a scratch because he's not killing penalties and he's not scoring, right? So
Mm-hmm.
we all know that he's sort of a one-dimensional player right now. And when the offense isn't going, like pretty much all the players on this roster right now, there's going to be some tough conversations. Um, so yeah, I think offensively, right, they got the shots off, I guess, but like you said, the heat map right there, and what I saw was a team that was just not really lacking confidence, but just looking stiff out there.
Yeah, I
Really,
wouldn't
like,
say lacking confidence, but definitely lacking energy. It was
hmm
like they weren't really bringing it to Buffalo, and then when like every time there was a turnover or something, they were just getting outskated on every
yeah,
chance. Like there were so many 50-50 like skating plays where it looked like the Sens player should have been able to win the race to the puck, and they almost never did. So there was a whole lot of that tonight. And yeah, in terms of the offense, early on when Travis Green shuffled the lines about halfway through the road trip, I did like the idea at first of sort of because the depth scoring, we're missing a few guys, sort of spreading out the
yeah,
top six a little bit. It worked for like one or two games, which was basically just the Kachuk, Greg, and Pinto line being really good for 2 games. But really, we didn't see anything else from any of the other lines over any of those games that they've been together. So at this point, I feel like you have to just go back to loading up the top six again because you're not getting any depth scoring anyway. So you might as
hmm
well just totally load up. And it's just tough because it seems like absolutely all of the Sens top guys have been totally cold at the exact same time. Like we've had a little bit from Kachuk lately, but absolutely nothing from Stützle, absolutely nothing from Batherson, and it's just it's ridiculous. And Josh Norris too, I give him a little bit of slack because he started the game with like bottom six line mates. So
yeah,
that to me seems like putting him in a position to fail. I don't really know what the bright idea was there. I don't really see how that was going to play out in a positive way in any reality. So yeah, it's just the line jumbling experiment. I think it needs to end, like you said.
Yeah. Like let's I'm looking at the stats right here. Let's list off some players when we're talking about depth scoring. Ostapchuk, shout out him. I think he's doing a fine job for what he can do right now. But he's 21 years of age, and unfortunately, we've run into some injuries. So the thing is, you have to kind of throw him in there, because how many players can you bring up Belleville and throw them in and have them being effective in a bottom six role? It's not many options there. Reinhardt, 2 points in 10 games, same sort of thing. Probably needs another year in Belleville. Let's see here. Gregor. Okay, so Gregor's got 6 points in 35 games.
And
It's not.
he
It's
he gets
not
moved
not
up the
enough.
lineup too.
Yeah,
So
yeah. He gets ice time.
that makes it even worse. He did get injured tonight, so hopefully he'll be all right. Hopefully he won't be out for too long, but he was not able to return to the game. But yeah, even like with him out, like you were saying, there's not that many options in Belleville to call up to
No.
fill a bottom six role. I guess they'll probably bring Yang Unique back since he played the game against Detroit, right? But like again, I don't think you're finding too much offense from those guys. Like Zach
No.
Ostapchuk, I do like his effort. I do like his energy. I feel like he's always noticeable in his shifts and
For sure.
trying to make something happen. But like you said, it's just those guys are not there yet to like chip in offensively at the NHL level. So
Hmm.
it's tough.
Yeah, like Pinto, he's being better, of course, but 10 points, 31 games, and is getting over 17 minutes of ice time. That is
Hmm.
a lot of minutes. If he was getting 13, then I'd be like, okay, you know what, he can build on this, but you're getting an extra 4 minutes there. He's killing penalties, he's on the power play. And like you said, like we've seen every combination. So it's like, what is the first line? Because tonight we started out with, I think it was Timmy, Batherson, and Giroux. I guess you call that the first line. And then there was like the Greg Pinto Kachuk one. I never liked that one. Uh,
They started off well, but the last few games has been like absolute silence from them since
yeah,
then.
they just got to go back to like, okay, put the Brady, Timmy, Giroux line together because we know that works. Or like the Brady, Josh, and the Brady, Norris, and Batherson line. That's always a good one. I don't know why they strayed away from that. Because it seems like whenever something goes wrong to the slightest of circumstances, the coaching staff switches it up. And I haven't minded the coaching staff this year. I think they've been fine. Like not really a whole lot to complain about there, but that's a big gripe for me. Maybe I'm overreacting to that, but it's something they really have to be patient with, I think, a little bit.
Yeah, and I just looked up the ice time for forwards tonight, how it ended up shaking out. I think Brady would have been first amongst all the forwards if he didn't end up in the penalty box a couple of times with 11 penalty minutes there. But it's Pinto with 19 minutes and 33 seconds and really Greg with 19 minutes. Like,
Really?
yeah, you
19 for
can't do
Greg.
that. Like these are
No.
good young players, but they should be on your third line. And that's the thing. When I was saying I liked that they were trying to spread out the offense and I liked Kachuk playing with those two guys, I wasn't expecting them to be like 20 minutes a night almost for that line.
No.
When you're gonna do that, you probably want to be rolling the three lines a little bit more evenly, which is what they were doing originally in that game against like Minnesota and Dallas. I think it was those two games. Was the first two games where that line was together. But yeah, really, Greg, 19 minutes a night is just like what are we doing here? It's ridiculous. Playing more than Batherson, Stützle, and Giroux. I know that those guys didn't have anything going tonight either, but those are the guys who actually have the talent to be able to get going eventually. So I do
Yeah.
wonder if that's a bit of a like message sending from the coach,
Hmm.
giving those guys a little bit less ice time. And then of course, Josh Norris lining up on the third line tonight, only 15 and a half minutes, but I can't really blame him for not doing anything in that situation. Although I feel like you probably should get him back in the top six to try to get him going.
Hmm.
Like if the rest of the top six isn't going, I don't see why you pick out and single out Norris specifically. Like that's a bit weird to me.
Yeah, I mean, he's been okay this year. Norris hasn't been great or bad. I don't think like he's almost on pace for a 30-goal season. You can't complain about that, really. He's got 14 and 40 games. It's okay. He's probably on pace for 45 points. I don't think that's good enough. You probably
Hmm.
want him in the 60s, especially when you're at the first power play, right?
Yeah.
Uh, yeah. Oh, I don't know where we go from here because what is because we have Perron and Amadio out of the lineup right now. What is going on with Perron? Like, because that's a guy you're paying $4 million, and he played the first 3 games, I think, in the season. He had to have some time off due to personal reasons. He comes back and then all of a sudden just gets injured right away. And I think that he has a back injury, what it
Yeah.
seems like. But that's a valuable asset, right? That's $4 million on your roster that just hasn't played. He's played 9 games for us this year. We're halfway through the season, and he's had 2 separate instances, and they're not really like. I remember when it came out, they didn't say anything about Perron being month to month, but
Hmm.
he's been out a long time.
It seems to happen that way with all the injuries this year, where it's like, oh yeah, this guy's day to day, and then we don't see him for a month or two. It's the
No.
same with Olmark, where it sounded like it was going to be minor, and then it's been 3 weeks
Yeah.
now. So, same with Perron. I think he was skating in a non-contact jersey today, both him and Amadio.
hmm
So like, I don't know. I don't know how long you need to stay skating in a non-contact jersey before you can play again, but like maybe we see them next week. But even then, throwing David Perron into the lineup and he has like 0 points in 9 or 10 games, it's like how much are we really going to get out of him at this point? I don't know.
I think it would be shout out Reinhardt and Ostapchuk, but I think it would be more than that. I mean, Perron is a vet. He's been in the league for so long. You're not counting on him to be, a 60-point player, but that's probably a guy you can throw in there after a couple games, and then you realize, okay, this is an effective depth player. Like he can go out there, play 12, 13 minutes a night, go on the second power play, put up some points, and not really hurt your team, right? I think on a depth chart, he's probably like your 10th forward, so a third liner at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, on the Sens, he probably places like based off his cap hit and his reputation and everything, he probably goes to 7 or 8, maybe, which I think is a little bit too high. And we'll get into it later, right? Because I think this team needs to add up front on the forward side of things.
Yeah, that's where I'm going to be leaning to when we talk about later about what the Sens need to add to this roster. But just to wrap up the topic of the lack of scoring lately, I had screenshotted this from Everyday Sens just to put it into perspective of how bad it's been for some of these guys. Is the last 11 games, Pinto has 5 goals and 7 points, but most of that came within like 2 games. Like one game where he had 2 goals, the game against
Yeah.
Vancouver he had 3 points. So it's really spotty. Pinto's either hot or he's completely cold. Um, Kachuk, 4 goals, 7 points in the last 11 games. Giroux, 2 goals, 6 points. Ridley Gregg, 4 goals, 5 points. Which, to be honest, that's not even bad. It's just that
No.
he shouldn't really be in the top 6 in general. But the really bad ones are Stützle, only 2 goals and 5 points. Batherson, 1 goal, 4 points, and Josh
Really?
Norris, yeah, and Josh Norris, 2 goals, 3 points. Like before the road trip, I remember specifically talking up Drake Batherson as being he was way up there on the team in points, and I guess he still would be
Yeah.
with Kachuk and Stützle, but he's gone invisible lately. Like him specifically, him Norris and Stützle, I think specifically, I don't know
Uh-huh.
what's going on with them.
All
They got to find the right line combination somewhere here
yes.
we know that these players can do better.
Yeah, we know it, and it's just okay. Like let's stick with 5 games to the lines. If they go 0-5, sure, shuffle it up again. But then you can't be like react to a reaction all the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because
Yeah.
when a team like let's just use Buffalo as a small example, right? It's the lowest of the low. They were on a 13-game losing streak. Everyone's like trade everyone except like Deline and Thompson, basically. And then they've had a decent performance recently. Are they going to make the playoffs? Probably not. But sometimes you got like Terry Pagula said, you got to find the solution within. Uh, and yeah, like that's what the team needs to do right now. I think Batherson's been okay, like seeing his play on the ice. Players are going to go through droughts, and he's on pace for what, like 75 points this year, so you can't complain about that whatsoever. Um, and the frustration tonight was just annoying, uh, because like Ed Batherson's not one of those guys I think that gets frustrated, and I like that because you can't have your top 6, like your entire top 6 being hotheads. Like Timmy is a pretty big hothead. Brady is. Josh, you saw what he did at the end of the game. Basically, Cousins and him were fighting, and towards the end, when they were skating off to the bench, Norris gave him a little shot with his stick. I'm like, dude, you can't do that. Don't be doing that.
Hmm.
It just makes your team look bad. It puts a target on your head for future games because this is not the only game that these teams are going to be playing against each other. And Giroux is a hothead, of course. Maybe I don't know if that's the right term to use or whatever, but this team runs on emotion, and they're gonna have to figure it out. I'm not like I don't know about you. I'm not like worried right now.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
I would say I'm worried, but yeah,
Okay.
I'm not saying like it's over yet, but like
No.
it's another position where the next game is huge. Like the game
Hmm.
against Detroit was huge, you lose to them. Then the the game against Buffalo is huge, you lose that. So if you lose another huge one, three in a row for the week, 0-3 for the week, then it's gonna be looking real bad. Like I'm worried. I wouldn't say that I'm saying
Yeah.
we're cooked yet, but it's not looking good, I'll say.
It's I didn't want to say that, and I didn't say this to you before, but I still feel like sort of confident in this team. And it
I
could be
envy
such a
that. I
bad
envy that.
thing.
I wish I could say that.
It's just more than past years because the defense is better, I think.
Hmm.
Like, just overall, we have everyone healthy now. You saw tonight, right? Like, we gave up, what, five bad chances and four of them went in. So, and we couldn't score. So that's the thing. I think the offense will come back and the defense is already there. Like, the chemistry is there. Shabbat and Jensen had their one bad game of the season tonight. I wasn't able to watch the St. Louis game, so I'm not actually sure what happened in that one. But that was their one bad game of the year. Zub's here, he's healthy. Sanderson has not had a great season. But that's the thing with the young players is that right away you see them come into the lineup and you're like, wow, Sanderson's so good for such a young player. And then he gets paid, and now he's getting paid $8 million dollars a year. And he's not going to be perfect right off the bat, right? So he's going to have his issues. He's 22, but the defense is there. That's what I think. Like the depth is there. I think it's well rounded overall. Now you just need a save. You just need a
Yeah.
save, and you can't really harp on Forsberg too much anyway because they score zero goals. But you need saves, and they don't really seem to be getting that much. I just want a backup that can give you a chance to win every night, and Forsberg does that like 25% of the time, which is not good.
Yeah, you're right that the defense is mostly there because, as I was saying earlier about the winning streak, yeah, a lot of it was Olmark, but also a lot of it was the defense being able to limit those huge mistakes, which they haven't been able to do tonight. And the St. Louis game was similar, especially for the Shabbat and Jensen pairing, where it was just those noticeable mistakes that end up in the back of your net. But you are right that for the most part this season, they've been able to limit those. So the positive outlook is, I guess, we can hope that it's just a little bit of a blip in the team's performance in terms of the defense for how it went tonight. The scoring is a whole other issue though, because obviously that's been kind of going downhill over the past month, even while the Sens were winning. So
Yeah.
that's probably a good segue into what our second segment will be, which is what do the Sens need to add the most, be it forward, goaltending, or defense. But before we get into that, just going to do the ad read for Hyperdrive Hockey. Shift into Hyperdrive and get ready to have some fun with your new source for all the biggest stories in hockey, bringing a unique style of broadcasting and commentary with a Quebecois flavor. Hyperdrive Hockey combines top-tier hockey analysis, big stories, pop culture, and a damn fun atmosphere that will drive debate, make you think, and more. Join Max, Daphne, and Kevin every Tuesday and Friday for your fill on the hockey world. You can find Hyperdrive Hockey on the Game Over Network YouTube channel, or you can subscribe to the podcast on Apple, Spotify, or Amazon. And they are currently just at the end of their holiday break, I believe. They will be back next week. So no new episode tomorrow, but I think next week is the return date for Hyperdrive Hockey. So yeah, we were getting into it a little bit earlier, but in terms of what this team needs to add, considering they got shut out tonight, that answered our question pretty easily in that this team needs to add offense. I was originally going to frame the question for this segment as what should the Sens buy at the deadline, but but after this loss, I'm more like, okay, I don't know if we'll be straight up buyers for rentals at the deadline, but just in terms of like what Steve Staios should be looking to add through the trade market, regardless of whether or not it's a rental or a player with term or anything like that, it's got to be forwards at this point, right? And we'll talk about the D and the goaltending too, but we might as well just start off with what our answer is that they need to add a forward, and I would say specifically a left winger. As I was saying about Ridley Gregg earlier, you don't want him in the top six ideally, even though he's done decent up there. It's just like he's not a top six caliber forward at this moment. So I would say left winger. Funny enough, we didn't notice him too much in this game because he did leave with the injury and then come back. But I feel like Jason Zucker could be a good target, like at the trade deadline. If we're buyers at the trade deadline, he's like way outperformed expectations in Buffalo. He's on an expiring deal. So if we're actually in contention and still way ahead of Buffalo in the standings later in the year, I would keep an eye on Zucker. I feel like that's the type of player that I'd like the Sens to add. But what do you think?
That's a good mention. The only thing is that our cap space, right?
Yeah, they would need to
So,
retain. It would be like 50%.
yeah. But even then, I don't think we're right at the cap. I don't think we can carry two forwards extra and one D extra right now because Perron's on the LTIR, so you can't really utilize that cap space. And then the only issue is, okay, you got if you're getting a forward like that who has a $5 million cap hit, you got to throw in Forsberg in that deal,
Yeah.
and then you got to find the backup to come back the other way. So like hypothetically, I could see a situation where Steos would throw in Forsberg in the deal, and then they add a forward, and then they add a goaltender from the same team or something like that. But it's got to be cheap. It's got to
hmm
be cheap. So I'm just looking at like some names here from Daily Faceoff. Um, and cap hit is important. One guy that maybe I'd look at is Ryan Donato from Chicago.
Yeah, he's got some
Um,
goals
he
this year, eh?
he's having a nice season. He makes $2 million. He has 22 points in 38 games.
Oh
That's
wow.
what you need. I think you
Yeah.
need this sort of guy that you need a little bit of a finisher, and Donato can do that. He's been a goal scorer in more of a depth role in the past. I don't think you need another pest like Frederick because you already have Kachuk, Greg, and Cousins. Um, Pajot, but he makes $5 million. Just looking here, like maybe a guy like Morgan Frost wouldn't be a whole lot, but I think Ryan Donato would be an excellent addition, actually. That would be
Yeah, I
my
like
top
that.
pick.
And the I didn't realize that he had 22 points. Like I knew
Yep.
he had some goals, but I kind of assumed it was going to be like an Adam Gaudette stat line of like
hmm
goals and no assists, but like the point pace there is at least like 40-point pace for the season. So I like that. I just you're right that they need a finisher because I feel like over the last few games, it's just been a lot of like, even when the Sens do create any chances, it's just the lack of finishing. They don't really have a
Yeah.
pure goal scorer. And I don't think they can necessarily get someone like that on the trade market during the season. It's probably more of something towards the future where that's like a guy that you want to draft or like if any big names become available like in the off season. But it's just, I feel like the mix on offense is just a bunch of playmakers and some pests, some pesky two-way forwards as well. They don't have that pure finisher, and Adam Gaudette had that nice run with just some puck luck and riding a ridiculous shooting percentage. But we've seen pretty clearly that that's not sustainable whatsoever. So yeah, they need more shooters, I think.
Yeah, because Gaudette, right? He was never an NHL player before. So, and once he starts to cool off, that he kind of becomes useless to a degree. He was
Hmm.
skating real bad tonight. Uh, but looking at Donato, right, he can put up 15 goals a season. Just look at his stat line, like 2022, he had 16 in 74 games. 2023, he had 14 in 71. Last year, he had 12, 30 points in 78 games. And this year, he's on pace for 45 points. So you might need to pay a little bit to get him. And who knows if he would even sign here because he's from the US and played hockey in the US and stuff. But cap hit's really important. Yeah, you're not going to go and get a guy like Brock Nelson or Pedersen or whatever. You're going to have to get a small addition. I'm kind of comparing it to 2 years ago when the Sens at the deadline they made some additions other than Chikrin. Like remember they got like Patrick Brown and
Patrick
stuff.
Brown, yeah,
Patrick
he
Brown.
was the other one. at that
Yeah,
deadline.
you need a little bit of a step up though. You need a guy that he's going to play every night. And one, I think actually getting a fourth line center would be ideal as well.
Okay.
So you can't get everything, of course, but and then okay, you could also I would be okay with the another D because once another injury happens, right? Like the D looks okay right now, but we've seen this. If Hamonic comes into the top four, it's not the best situation. I would add a left D there and someone who can play both sides, hopefully. That's a little bit of an extra because in Belleville, I'm not sure if there's a guy down there that you can really trust for like a 20 game stretch or something like that.
Yeah, we've seen the injuries happening on the right hand side, and at least like
Hmm.
Madden Paolo, JBD have been able to put in decent performances. And Hamonic, I mean, they were winning games. They were winning games
They
with
were,
Hamonic in net
yeah.
in the lineup. So that's all I'll say about that. But you're right on the left side that if anyone gets injured on the left side, they really
Oh, we're
have
cooked.
nothing.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
If you end up with Clevin in the top four and one of Shabbat and Sanderson out of the lineup, and then yeah, I don't even know who they call up on left defense. Like Jeremy Davies has a bunch of points on Belleville, but I don't even know who he is. Like I don't know who this guy
Yeah.
is. I've never seen him before. So you're right that that would be a good idea, is a little bit more defensive depth. But I don't really know. It's tough because the current injuries that are uh, happening with the team kind of changes how I think, because a few weeks ago it would have been like, oh yeah, we need a right D, we need a right hand D for sure, just because
Hmm.
Zub's out, and even when everyone's healthy, they still like to play Hamonic on the third pair. But now all of a sudden Zub's back, Hamonic's out, and I'm like, maybe scoring is the problem. Maybe other
Hmm.
positions are the problem. So it's interesting too, and like you mentioned about the cap hits as well. Again, it totally depends on who's injured and when, because they've got Hamonic and JBD on IR right now, I think, and Olmark on IR, so that gives them a lot of room all of a sudden. But they will be expecting all those guys back at some point, except maybe JBD's might be a quite long term potentially. I think what was it, a high ankle sprain?
I missed what happened, like, because I actually went off Twitter for a little bit, uh, for around that time when he got hurt, and then I come back and I see this brutal video of him like wincing in pain at
Yeah,
practice. So there's a board battle or something like that, and that's a tough loss because he's been good this year. He's undeservedly not played a lot. He should be playing every night, in my opinion.
I agree.
So yeah, you could add another D, but then you kind of look at each position and you could say, okay, we could add anywhere, because
Yeah.
goaltending, like you waive Forsberg? Maybe it's something to think about. He's got a long leash. He has.
He sure does. It's just the circumstances of Omar being injured. It's like, and especially with the schedule too being a lot of back to backs. It's like you can't just only play Marilinen and run with him for a
No.
while. They had to split the Dallas and St. Louis games back to back, and then they're gonna have to split this upcoming weekend too. And then it's every weekend for the rest of January's back to backs. So we're gonna be seeing a lot of Anton Forsberg coming up. But in terms of the like, I guess the ranking of what position the Sens need to add at, like I would probably put the goaltending as like second behind adding a forward, because
Hmm.
it's like you said earlier, it's
I
just
agree.
not reliable with Linus Olmark. The problem is that it's really hard to trade for a good goalie in the middle of the season, especially one that is actually not on a very high cap hit. Like friend of the show Alex Adams published an article a few days ago talking about how the Sens need a goalie, and he was quoting Elliot Friedman, who threw a couple of names out there, but like the only good name was John Gibson. And as we said
No.
about the
No.
cap hit, that's a 6.3 million cap hit, and I think he's got a couple of years left on that. So that's like pretty much a non-option unless you can do something crazy like have them retain 50% and give them Forsberg and like give them someone else too. So unless Steve Staios does something crazy and gives them a whole boatload of assets to get Gibson for 50%, that's not happening. And then the only other names that were mentioned, which are I guess more realistic but not very enticing, were Dan Vladar and Peter
No.
Mrazek. So it's just, yeah, like
No. Not
how
happening.
are you gonna get a goalie mid-season? And even if you do, those are not great options.
Yeah, I think I was taking it back to 2017. I was thinking, the type of goalie that Mike Condon was at that time, and it was early on in the season. I think it was around November, and you kind of got to pick those teams that have three goalies on their team. So you could think about
Hmm.
Detroit, but Detroit's not carrying, or they're not trading any of their goalies to us anyway.
No.
So you
And one of
can't
them is
add,
Talbot, so I don't
yeah,
think we're gonna bring Cam Talbot back.
or Alex Lyon, who's like their better goalie on
Yeah,
the
he
team,
would be the
maybe
best
after
of the
Talbot.
three, I think.
And Husso makes about $5 million, so nope.
Yeah.
Um, like you gotta somehow you gotta get lucky that you're gonna find one, and you gotta find a goalie that's hungry. Because Dan Vladar, I don't know, is he hungry? I'm not sure. He's been bad for like 3 years now. He had one good season in there.
Yeah.
He has an 888 save percentage. That's the same as Forsberg.
Hmm. It would not be an
So
improvement at all. Like
no,
maybe you could argue like change of scenery or something. Maybe you trade Forsberg for Vladar straight up or something like that.
maybe
But
it could work.
I don't think that's something that would necessarily have the fans in Ottawa reacting as like, oh yeah, this is an upgrade because statistically it's
No.
just not.
No. I think you kind of got to stick it out with Forsberg right now because you have really no other options. I would actually give sort of a leash to Meriläinen because Forsberg, I'm sorry, but that is a goaltender I think that fits well on a bad team because he'll get a lot of shots. His save percentage will look pretty good, but once he's not playing a lot of games and he's the backup,
Yeah.
he's not going to be very good. And you've seen that in the past 3 seasons, basically. He has not been an above average goaltender.
While we're on the topic of goalies, I think they probably got to give the start to Levi Meriläinen, right, for against Pittsburgh on
Mhm.
the first half of the back to back.
I agree. I think
Yeah,
so.
because like the second half of the back to back is Dallas, and Meriläinen did okay against them last time. Not a good result, not good stats, but like the goals weren't really his fault. But I feel
Mhm.
like you want to try to put your best foot forward on the first half of the back to back, being the more important game against Pittsburgh. Like if you beat Pittsburgh and lose to Dallas, I think that's fine. That's a fine result. Beating the team that's close to you in the wild card race and then losing an out of conference game on the second half of the back to back, not a big deal. So I feel like they gotta lead with Meriläinen from now on. Like I was saying, they can't give him a huge string of games because of all the back to backs, but I feel like you go with him on the first halves of all of those back to backs, and you play him in the games that are not the back to backs. I don't know how much Travis Green is willing to do that because he might just favor the veteran with Forsberg getting those last two starts, and I'm sure he'll probably think, oh, tonight's not on the goalie, and he might go back with Forsberg again on Pittsburgh. But I think we're both on the same page there that we want to see probably Levi getting more starts if possible.
Yeah, I think because he had like that Minnesota game was great. I'm actually going back to 2023. I think I could be wrong on this, but remember that Matt Sogard was the rookie of the month for the NHL?
Yeah, yep. It was
What happened?
it was Forsberg. So who Forsberg and who was the other goalie at that point? That was Cam
Talbot.
Talbot. That was when
Yeah,
Cam Talbot was
yeah.
here. And then Forsberg broke both of his legs or whatever the hell it was.
Oh
So they
yeah.
had to play Sogard. And I remember he actually started off quite well. The team was playing well in front of him at that point, but then it was just the scenario where the team's performance started to slip, and then all of a sudden his stats tanked. He ended
Yeah.
with like an 894 save percentage that season, but it started off pretty well. He did have a good stretch, but then it's been all downhill from there. So yeah,
Yeah. And so like I could see a scenario maybe where Levi goes on a little bit of a run. I kind of trust him in net because he's
yeah,
he's smaller and I think that goaltenders it's so weird uh, when you see a goaltender picked just because he's 6'7", and then you take a look at UC Saros, who's been the most consistent goaltender in the entire league, basically, for the past like long time, like ever since 2018. He always has a good save percentage, and that's what I go off of to base some goalies. But he's always been the best goal, and he's 5'11", right? He's
yeah.
the shortest goalie in the league. Um, and Levi, I think he's 6'2" or something. He's not a humongous guy, but he's a dog in there. He fights and he's a battler. And Forsberg had that. But you know, that was 3 years ago. When he was on waivers and he was trying to fight for an NHL career, and he got a good contract out of it. So shout out him for that. But I'm just going through his game log here, right? Like, okay, the Detroit game, he was good. He was fine. St. Louis, 4 goals on 25 shots. Uh, Islanders, oh my God, I remember that
Yeah,
one.
that was his worst game by far.
3 goals on 12 shots. LA, 4 goals on 26. Calgary, 3 goals on 27. Same thing with Carolina. Like, it's just not enough. It's not. And we've seen him for so long now. He's been here for 4 seasons, five
Hmm.
seasons,
Yeah.
5. He's been here 5 years. That's a long time for a backup goaltender at the end of the day.
Hmm. Yeah, and Pierre Dorion gave him like tandem goalie money. So
Yeah,
we're still
yeah.
we're still seeing the tail end of that at least expiring at the end of the season. So yeah, I agree. I guess to sort of wrap this segment up, I think forward number one priority, probably a left winger, a shooter, like that idea of Ryan Donato. A couple other names just quickly that I was looking at UFAs that could be good ideas. Gus Nyquist, he's having a bad season, but also everyone on Nashville is having a bad
Yeah,
season.
buy low.
No one can score over there. Buy low, and his cap hit is only 3 million. So
Yep.
like get that retained a little bit too, and it's super cheap. And he had
Hmm.
75 points last year. So
Yeah, that
like
was weird.
only 17 in 40 games this year, but you got to think that like he bounces out kind of in the middle. Maybe a change of scenery could be helpful. So I think that could be an idea as well. And also Kyle Palmieri, 5 million cap hit is a little bit too much, but the Islanders are like looking pretty cooked, and we know he can score goals, 30 goals
Hmm.
last year. So that's a couple more names to throw out there. But yeah, forward number one priority, goaltending, a backup goaltender second priority, and probably surprisingly defense is probably the lowest priority, which is a weird thing to say about the Sens.
Hmm. Yeah, I think 1 through 6, they're fine. But I think 1 through 12 on forward, if you had to power rank the lines, right? So you go Kachuk, Stutzla, Giroux, first line. Second line, like let's say everyone's healthy. Second line, you go Perron, Norris, Batherson. Third line, you go Greg, Pinto, and Amadio. And that leaves the fourth line, right? So then you have, remember we were going to the season, we were talking about, okay, the fourth line's sort of a jumble. Like we don't know who it's going to be. They add Cousins. I think Cousins is ideal in the fourth line. And then you have Gregor, who has proved to not be really an everyday NHL player. He has good speed, but that's a guy you plug and play. He's going to be
Hmm.
energy. He's going to jump in there.
He should be
Um,
number
there's,
13.
yeah, there's a reason why the Leafs let him go. I'll just say that. And then the fourth line center, I mean, Gaudette started there, but he's really fallen off. It would be a perfect situation if you had just had Gregor and Gaudette as the extras.
Hmm.
It would.
Yeah.
And then you have Cousins on the fourth line with X and X, basically.
Would
So if you
you, you know what? You know
sorry,
who
go
I
ahead.
forgot about? Would you call up Zach McEwen again for another round on the fourth line?
No, no,
He wouldn't even bother.
no, no. That's a guy you call up for enforcer duties.
Yeah. He had a good little run there at the start of the season, but yeah.
But it was like one game where he had 2 goals, right? And he just didn't
Yeah,
score again.
yeah,
So,
but I felt like he brought good energy and had pretty good
Mhm.
physical play. I wouldn't be mad if it happened, but also yeah, it's not like ideal. It's not like I'm gonna call for it. But I
No,
just randomly thought of that because to be honest, I forgot that he was in Belleville. I forgot that we still had him.
the
So
same.
just
Yeah.
that was just randomly came to mind. But yeah, from there, I think we'll throw it into the next segment. Game Over is an independent production focused on community, inclusion, and quality people. If you're interested in supporting the Game Over Network, we have crowdfunding options available. In the description of this episode, you'll find a link to our Patreon page, which we actually just updated the perks over there, so you can take a look. Those have changed a little bit. And we're also working on a page through LaRouche, a crowdfunding platform for companies originating in Quebec. For LaRouche, we're aiming to raise 15K, and if we hit that goal, we'll gain access to government grants that allow us to employ more people. If you have any ideas for what you'd like to see as giveaways or perks on Patreon or anything like that, let us know in the comments on Twitter, Instagram, or our Discord server, which you can join on our website, thegameovernetwork.com. You can get into our Discord there. Now, into the third segment for tonight, I figured that we would just take a look at the out-of-town scoreboard and kind of talk about the wild card race and the other teams that the Sens are competing with here. With how this game turned out, that is going to actually now just be a really depressing segment now because it's just like bad developments with the out-of-town scoreboard. So it's kind of depressing actually, but that is what I planned for the third segment today. It's big wins for Pittsburgh and Columbus, which is brutal. I didn't see how Tampa and Boston ended. If that went to overtime, I'm gonna lose my mind. Okay,
Boston won or lost, sorry.
thank God that it ended in regulation, regardless
Yeah.
of who won. Ooh, yeah, the double empty net from Tampa Bay there. So Boston moves down into that wild card spot. Actually, finally Tampa overtakes them, which is
Finally.
hilarious with 5 games in hand.
Took forever. Like Boston, oh my God, that
Boston had
team
the
just
most fraudulent like top 3 division spot for so
it's
long.
yes, they kept it for like 25 games and they fired their coach
They
and
fired their
everything.
coach, and I think they were still third in the division when they fired the
Yeah.
coach.
It's insane how much that organization, like how much they will do to win, and I respect it. But yeah, now they're 2019 and 5, right? And they're still in the first wild card. This the Sens have a golden opportunity here to make the playoffs, genuinely.
Hmm.
Like there is the three teams in the Metro are stacked. Like Washington, New Jersey, Carolina, they're all on pace for what, like 105, 10 points, something like that. And then the Atlantic's not the best. Like Florida's been good, Toronto's been good, and then Tampa's had their issues. Their goal differential is great at plus 36. But then there's like the two spots there in the what, like the Sens can do this. They genuinely can. That's the reason like why I'm saying is that they can. I still have faith in them is because of their situation they're in right now and the
Hmm.
odds that I'm seeing of these advanced analytics. And I don't want to cling on that too much, but they're right there. But the thing is that you look at a game like tonight, it's like, okay, they're at home and they're against Buffalo and they lose.
Yeah.
So
It's like you look at the standings and you're like, "Oh, I have hope." And then you watch them play and you're like, "Oh, I don't have hope anymore. It's
yeah,
gone. It's already gone."
yeah.
So that's the tough
So
part.
yeah, there's just the jumble of teams. Like Buffalo is now 7 points out. I mean, it's not impossible, I guess, but
Yeah.
we are 3 points out with 2 games in hand. But that's unfortunate because we had the second wild card for a good moment there. I
Hmm.
think it was a 2 weeks or no, maybe not 2 weeks, a week or two, like in between.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's the depressing part is that that 6 game win streak gave them a big cushion to
yeah.
actually give them some separation between teams, and they pretty much undone the 6 game win streak already.
Hmm.
It's like a stretch of 1 win and 5 losses, I think, since then.
Yeah.
So it's it did give them a cushion for a little bit, but it's like basically gone already, which is the problem. They're still in the mix. So
That's
I can't
fine.
I can't freak out too much yet. That's the
Yeah.
thing. I think I've said this a couple times, but before the road trip, if you told me they would go 4-4-1, I'd be like, "Hey, that's pretty good. That would have us in the mix," and I'd be totally happy with that. It just feels
Yeah.
worse because they started the road trip with 3 wins right away, and then
Yeah.
got all the losses on the back end of the road trip, which brings me to a more pessimistic outlook. Um, and then obviously the first home game back was a giant piece of shit. So that's the problem. They gotta get going now. Like I don't know. They got to pick it up to keep themselves in the mix at this point. They've been able
Yeah.
to stay in the mix because of that win streak. But if they don't pick it up soon, like they're only 1 game above 500 now. So hopefully we're not ending up like below 500 again. And then at that point they're cooked. They
I,
gotta keep their heads above water.
Yeah, I like the reaction from the crowd too at the end. Let them hear it, boo
Yeah.
them. You
Hmm.
paid good money and they didn't show up. Deservedly so. It wasn't like one of the boos where, okay, we're done with you. Like I'm throwing my jersey on the ice. It's over. It was a sort of a boo like, okay, listen guys, we believe in you here. That was terrible what we saw out there, but we like you can do it. You
Hmm.
can go on a little streak here. And I think, the boys, they kind of just went off the bench and I think they'll take it to heart a little bit, but I think this is a moment where I think they can actually sort of go on a little bit of a run, like in a way, go on a 3 or 4 game win streak. I have belief in this team that they can do it. And more than in past years, because in past years it was predictable, right? They would beat the bad teams at home like quite a bit. They beat Columbus, they beat Buffalo like 4-0, but then they go to Carolina and they'd lose. But then we've seen this year they've gone to Carolina, they've won. What's another a really impressive game? Like the
They shut out the
Vancouver game.
Leafs. Yeah, Vancouver as well. You're right. They've been
Yeah.
able to step up against good
Yeah.
opponents, which is different than past years.
Yeah, and their road record is not perfect, but it's not horrible, like 9-11-2. It's
It's
okay.
an
Like
improvement because every year before this, it's been much worse than that.
mhm. So They can. I think they can. At the end of the day, I think they can have a 500 road record. Because they found that B game, and it's been a while since we've been on a broadcast here together. But um, what I was telling my friends is that they found a B game playing on the road. Like they know how to grind it out now,
Mm-hmm.
and you can see that there's been very little games where they've allowed more than five or more goals. I'm just going through the season here. One,
I
two,
think
three.
the only times I remember allowing 5 is the first loss to Buffalo, and then like the 8-7 crazy win against the Kings. You're right that even the worst games this season haven't been like 5, 6, 7 goals against for the most part, other than those two.
No, no. Yeah, I think I'm counting. I think six here in total.
Mm-hmm.
Six losses with five or more. So there's been, I think, two in there that were six goals. So they haven't allowed a seven spot.
Which games were those? I can't remember.
The six spot games.
Yeah, other than
Okay.
the LA one.
Yeah, so the LA, the Vegas, that was an empty netter
Oh
though.
yeah, the empty net. That's the one where we were winning with like 5 minutes left. So
Hmm.
I just remember the fact that we were up 4-3, and then I forget that they scored 6 in the end. Fuck.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, with like what you said about the booze too, I agree that that was not so much of a like, oh, we hate you, you suck booze. It was like a we know you can do better booing. Especially in the second period. I was actually glad that the booing started before the end of the game, because at the end of that second period, when they got that power play and allowed 2 shorthanded breakaways in the first minute of that, and immediately off the face-off too, to a fucking Buffalo Sabres defenseman, like not even one of the good
Clifton.
ones, Connor Clifton shorthanded breakaway. I think if he scored that, I would have ended it all. I like what the
Yeah.
fuck.
Yeah.
So
Uh,
and even without those breakaways, like they were not generating anything at all either. It was the type of thing where I don't want to see the team booed, but it was sort of like almost encouraging booze. It was like we know we are acknowledging that you're laying an egg, but it's because we know you can do better, and we've seen them do better.
and there hasn't been too many like stinkers this year,
Hmm.
really. There's
Most
been
of the
a tough.
games they've been in it the whole way.
Yeah. Yeah, like there's been some tough stretches there where remember there was like the Vancouver game that was the worst point of the season because they would always go down early and then they make a comeback and then they wouldn't get any points out of it.
Hmm.
And then since then they went on a really good streak there. I think they were like 10-2-1. A really nice streak that put them in the conversation in like in a legit wild card spot where at one point we were talking about okay, could they even catch Boston here with games in hand? And that was, yeah, the Buffalo. It's so weird how we just suck against Buffalo and the UPL plays amazing.
Yeah.
But
Fucking
that,
2 games against Buffalo, the score is a combined 9-1. Like
yeah.
what the hell is that?
So you can't make a prediction on us beating the bad teams, and you can't make a prediction on us losing to the good teams.
Hmm.
So that's the thing. Like, and you know what? Maybe that could be a good thing, a blessing in disguise that we don't know what this team is going to show up with every night. Because on paper in the past, they've gone up against the bad teams and they played great, but then they go up against the good teams and they can't seem to figure it out. And this year, it's a bit of mix of both. And you know what? I'll take that option rather than the years past.
Hmm. Yeah, you're right that they used to be really predictable, and then this season it's anything but. It's like it's all over the place. It's a roller coaster. It's just been like highs and lows from week to week, it seems. So yeah, at least hopefully they will remain unpredictable in that they will actually be able to surprise us again, I think. But yeah, in terms of the out of town scoreboard, I'm very salty that Montreal caught up to us and Detroit
Yeah.
right behind us too. But also, I feel like those two teams are on such massive heaters that they have to cool off very
They
soon.
have to, right?
Whereas the Sens are on their like one of their worst stretches of the season, and they'll even if they don't turn it around to be amazing, they have to at least pick it up a little bit.
Mhm.
So like Montreal 8-2-0 in the last 10, like that's got to stop soon. And Detroit with 5 wins in a row with the new coach, like I don't know. Though I think those rosters they can have their moments of getting some win streaks, but I don't think that
Mhm.
they're gonna keep it up for the rest of the season. So I feel like it really comes down to Columbus, Pittsburgh, Ottawa, and Boston because Boston has now been passed by Tampa to into that wild card spot. So Boston is the team I think that
Yeah.
we really need to focus on, especially with two matchups against Boston this month. Those are going to be huge.
I would be worried about Pittsburgh too. Columbus, Zach Werenski's having a fantastic
Yeah,
season,
that
like
guy needs to be
MVP
nominated
level.
for the Hart.
Yeah.
Seriously.
I checked this out. I'm like, whoa, you're second in scoring. You have 46 points in 41 games.
Yep.
Um, I don't know. Columbus, they're a wild card. I have no idea what they could be. Pittsburgh, I actually have some confidence. Like, I would be worried about them, because they've been around since like they had a bad start.
Yeah.
Uh, so they're there too. Boston, I don't know. That's the thing. The two last wild cards, it's a bunch of not trash, but mid, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's what the Sens are right now. We're mid. So are they going to
Yep.
get out of it? We'll see.
It's the battle of mid in the Eastern
Yeah.
Conference for the wild card
Ugh.
races. Yeah, I think Columbus. They have the offense, but the defense and goaltending I think is definitely the weakest out of like Boston, Pittsburgh, Ottawa, and Columbus, grouping them in there. The like Elvis Merzlikins is similar to Anton Forsberg, where he'll either like steal a game or he'll just absolutely sell and allow
Hmm.
5 goals. So I feel like if any team is gonna fall off, I would look at Columbus as that, but they are again also riding a heater right now, so you can't count them out yet.
Yeah.
That's just the read that I have on them is that I think the defense and goaltending is going to sink them in the end. But I don't know if the Sens can't get scoring, the offense might sink the Sens. So you can say
Yeah.
that about pretty much any team, I guess.
Yeah. And you need Allmark back. Like I think where are we at? Because he a week away, maybe if we're lucky. Just looking at the schedule here, right? You have a back to back. Like I wouldn't expect him back until like the New Jersey game on the 19th or like the New York game on the 21st, really at this rate.
Yeah.
So you kind of just gotta like hang around 500 and then really start to run with him. Make sure that he's 100% ready to go because you don't want to make it a lingering injury, especially with a back injury as a goaltender.
Hmm. Yeah. Totally agreed. So it's going to be real interesting with lots of games in January for the Sens. But before we throw it to our last segment of taking a look at chat, just going to give a quick ad read for Game Over's merch. Going to get that QR code and slideshow on the screen there. What better way to support something you love than by rocking it as clothing? Game Over's apparel line has dropped with 3 unique designs. Whether you feel the nostalgic pull of our retro skater design, if you want to make a statement with our established design, if you want to wear your love for goalies proudly with live and die by the goalie design, or if you just need another coffee to get through the winter, we have you covered for all of that. Designed by Brady Chalice from Game Over Winnipeg, use the QR code on stream now to take a look through our apparel store and help us rebuild local sports media in Canada while repping your community. So yeah, hit the buzzer for the fourth period there, the overtime period. Not a whole lot going on in chat tonight, which doesn't surprise me because this is the type of game where you just turn that shit off. If you if you have no investment,
Yeah.
you don't even tune into the third period. I have to say, if I was like at this game in person, I probably would have walked out like
Oh man.
at some point
Yeah.
in the third period. Like I don't think I would have made it to the final buzzer at that point. That this is the like beat the traffic type of night for the fans at the CTC. But thank you to Ty Smith and Adam Firebear for showing up in chat. Love to see you guys as always. Adam Firebear said, I would like the Sens to surprise in a game by actually stopping the bleeding and winning from behind. That's, yeah, I was going over on a couple shows ago about how the Sens never tie the game with the goalie pulled. They've had a few of those like false comebacks this year where they we were saying they'll stay in games, they won't get blown out too bad, but yeah, when they can't even get a couple of goals to make it feel close, it's depressing. So in terms of this team's fight, I feel like overall it's been really good this season when they've been down in games, despite them not really having any comeback wins. It's just it wasn't there tonight. It wasn't, they needed a spark from like sort of like an individual moment where someone does something that really gets the team going, and they just didn't have that. Just individually, no one had the sauce tonight. I'll put it that way.
No, yeah, and I mean those games are gonna happen, right? Until that becomes, 4 or 5 games in a row, that's when you really start to get concerned. And you got to wonder on the future of the core,
Hmm.
because that was a question, right? When we lost to Vancouver, people were really starting to question the core and
Yeah.
looking at the first power play unit and a guy like Shabbat too. And Olmark was not good, but they've brought themselves to, relativity, if you want to call it that. They're in the mix. They're not out of it. They're not Buffalo. They're not, Detroit before the run. So they have an opportunity here. They're in control of their own destiny. I have confidence in them. I don't think they're going to grab a top 3 spot, but there's a huge opening for this team to actually grab one of those spots. Like
Yeah.
it's not one, it's two. Like there's 2 spots, and you know you get to the playoffs, anything could happen. I just be happy to get in the playoffs. Like I want to see the CTC rock in for at least 2 games. I
Hmm.
don't care even if they get this swept. Right,
Yeah.
that's a moment you can build on, and really see. Like I want to see Timmy like go down end to end and score a goal, and like the fans just go crazy with like, and seeing the new jerseys too in the playoffs, right? We haven't seen
Oh
that.
yeah.
I want to see how Shabbat handles, being playing key minutes in the playoffs. I want to see Brady go through the boards. I want to see Josh like rip one top shelf for an OT winner. You know what I mean?
I
Like,
want to see the same team going up against Ridley Gregg for like 4 to 7 games in a
yes.
row and see how they
Like
react to that.
it would be so good, and the storylines we could just pick from it, right? Like I'm actually getting chills just thinking about it. But we're still half a season away of figuring out that's going to happen. So
Yeah. Like you said, sort of towards the end of November there, it was kind of like it was like make or break time for the core, where it
mhm.
was like, okay, if you don't turn things around right now, it's probably gonna be like we're gonna be taking some questions about like who stays and who goes. Um, and I feel like they're almost in that position again. If they don't start picking up some wins over the next few games here, it's probably just gonna be
Yeah,
like a repeat of that, where last time they were able to drag themselves out of it and put together a good month of December. And now they've kind of undone it and put themselves in that position again. I wouldn't, just
yeah,
because they have been able to dig themselves out of it already this season, I won't freak out and say like, oh, it's time to talk about the core yet. But again, we'll have to see the results. If the losing skid continues here, then who knows? But it is, I do like your positivity that we were able to, the core was able to pull themselves out of it already once this season. So even though they've had a slump,
yeah.
we've seen that they've been able to turn it around.
Yeah, I think I'm just thinking about my positivity right now, and we've done probably 5 losses together out of 5 games, and this is probably the most positive I've been about this team.
Yeah, I guess it makes sense because most of the other ones are actually like I think all of the other ones were before the 6 game winning streak in
Yeah,
December. So at
yeah,
that point we were questioning, well, can they even put together a winning streak at all because they hadn't
mhm,
won 3 games in a row at that point in the
yeah,
year. But now we know they can. It might require Linus Olmark and net and like the power play getting back to how it was earlier in the season, which are big ifs. We don't know if those things will be able to happen, but we know that they can happen. So it makes sense. It makes sense that even though this was such a terrible game, the Sens are at a better point this season than when we were doing shows earlier in November. So it does make sense.
yeah. I think that's pretty much all I got for tonight. But I'll say that I think to continue on this discussion, like there has been a better culture change with this roster. There's more, like I was saying, there's a better B game for what they can do. So they can pretty much beat anyone if they try and they put in a good performance. There's been some good wins this year that, and not just one, like there's been a handful of them that you can look at and say, wow, like they shouldn't have won that game, but they did. And that's what good teams do. Tonight was a one-off, so I'm just not gonna. I'm just trying to go back into the schedule right here. Like, when was the last bad game for St. Louis? I
Yeah,
guess,
St. Louis,
but
but that being like right at the tail end of the long road trip, I feel like you
yeah.
can cut them a bit of slack for that and back to back as well.
Hmm. And like, okay, so you got to go back to the Islanders too, but
Hmm.
that was even like
They played
them
really
sucking.
well in that game. It was
It
just
was just Forsberg.
Forsberg and like the penalty kill in
Yeah.
that game. So
the LA game was a 5-2 loss, but that was on the road, and I think there was an empty netter in there.
Yeah. Yep.
And LA's good, so like you got
Hmm.
to look at the Vancouver one, and that's like a month and a half ago. So you know what I mean? Like, maybe I look delusional right now, but I'm good for tonight. I'm good for
Yeah,
tonight.
we won't freak out too much yet. I'll freak out if they lose to Pittsburgh and Dallas, because then at that point they're below
Yeah.
500, and
Yeah.
you can't be doing that. If you get below 500 in January, then it's done. It's over. So they'll have to pick it up and they'll have to pick it up and they'll have to meet our optimism. They'll have to make good on that. We have some optimism. Hopefully they can live up to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that'll do it for tonight. Thank you everyone so much for watching or listening. Leave a like on the stream if you enjoyed, share it around, and if you're not subscribed already, please subscribe to Game Over Ottawa. Have a good night, everyone.